Good Friday. How can one describe such a day? The wrong of all humanity, putting an end to an innocent man, the Son of God. This is the story of Jesus' death by way of a cross. This is the incredible part of it. Our sin stopped his heart. Our sin drove the nails firmly in the hands of God. So what's good about Good Friday? Let me tell you something. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
Jesus is tested. Mark 14, verses 22 to 36. They went to the place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, "My heart is crushed with so much grief. I feel like I'm dying. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went on a little farther and fell to the ground. He prayed that if it were possible, the suffering that was awaiting him might pass him by. "Abba, Father," he cried out, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Jesus had a nasty feeling of what was coming next. Deep down inside, he knew that this journey would lead to his own death, a slow, painful death on a cross. He was anxious. He was frightened. He didn't want to have to die, and if there was any chance of things being different, he would be the first to take it. He struggled to cope with the fear on his own, and so he prays. He prays to his Father for help, someone bigger to turn to at this desperate time. Think about. Sometimes it all gets too much. We all need someone to lean on. Take time to think and pray about the things that worry you and the situations that make you fear about what will happen next in your life. Write your worries or fears on the paper hearts. Simply hold a paper heart in your hand as you think and pray, asking God for strength. As Jesus' heart was crushed with grief, crush up the paper heart and place it at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room as a sign of laying your worries and burdens at the feet of Jesus.
Jesus is betrayed. Mark 14, 43 to 46. Jesus was still speaking when Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. The chief priests, the teachers of religious law, and the community elders had sent them. The traitor Judas had given them a prearranged signal. "You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss. Then you can take him away under guard." As soon as they arrived, Judas walked up to Jesus. "Teacher," he exclaimed, and gave him a kiss. Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Jesus is betrayed by a friend, one of his own followers. Judas had been with Jesus as one of the 12 for 3 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How could he do it? How could he betray his own teacher? Judas was paid 30 silver coins for his lack of loyalty in handing Jesus over to the authorities. Think about it. Jesus put his own frustrations, greed and selfishness before his friendships. Take a silver coin. Take it and hold it in your hand. As you hold the coin taken, think about your own relationships with family and friends. Are you loyal? Are you the trustworthy type? Or are you easily frustrated by people, just like Judas? Lift up to God those things, those times when you have been anything other than a friend. Ask for forgiveness for any times that you have let people down or betrayed their trust and friendship. Take time to think about the people who have betrayed you. Ask God for the strength to forgive them. Then place the silver coin at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room.
Jesus is accused. Mark chapter 14, verses 53 to 56 and 61 to 64. They took Jesus to the high priest's home, where the leading priests, the elders, and the teachers of religious law had gathered. Inside, the leading priests and the entire council were trying to find evidence against Jesus so they could have the excuse to put him to death. But they couldn't find any evidence. Instead, many witnesses told lies against him, but their stories did not agree with each other. Jesus stayed silent and made no effort to interrupt. The high priest then asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothing in horror and said, "We don't need any other witnesses. You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" "Guilty," they all shouted. "He deserves to die." The high priests were determined to prove Jesus guilty. They even went as far as making up lies about him. People had many things to say about Jesus, but they were not always positive. Think about. Sometimes those who doubt can influence us all, but the truth is always there to be found. Think about the lies and doubts told about you. Think about the lies and doubts you have told about others. Look at the word search. Among the negative words, see if you can find the Messiah. Ask for God's forgiveness for the times when you have been less than truthful about others. There are many different names for Jesus. Who is Jesus to you? Write the word on the card and place it at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room.
Where Jesus
Jesus is denied. Mark 14, 66 to 72. Meanwhile, Peter was in the courtyard below. One of the servant girls who worked for the high priest came by and saw Peter warming himself at the fire. She looked at him closely and said, "You were with Jesus of Nazareth." But Peter denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, as he went out into the courtyard. Just then a rooster crowed. When the servant girl saw him standing there, she began telling the others, "This man is definitely one of them." But Peter denied it again. Moments later, some of the other bystanders confronted Peter and said, "You're a Galilean. You must be one of them." Then Peter began to shout, curse and swear, "I'm telling you, I don't know this man you're talking about." Straight away the rooster crowed the second time. Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. You denied. Realizing what he had done, he broke down and wept. Peter sat there and denied Jesus behind Jesus' back. Peter showed himself to be a fair-weather friend, letting down his closest friend just when he needed him most. But why did he feel the need to do it? Did he begin to doubt who Jesus was? Or was he just scared and fearful of what would happen to him if they had found out that he really did know Jesus? Think about it. Sometimes our friends know us better than we think. For Peter, it was the sound of the cockerel crowing that reminded him of what Jesus had predicted. Read again the account of Peter's denying Jesus. Look at the conversation happening in the reading. If you were Peter, what would you have done? How often do you claim to know Jesus? Think about how often you deny knowing Jesus. Is it amongst your friends, your family, or both? Ask God for boldness to share your faith with those around you.
Jesus is condemned. Mark chapter 15, verses 6 to 15. During Passover, Pilate always freed one prisoner chosen by the people, and at that time there was a prisoner named Barabbas. He and some others had been arrested for murder during a riot. The crowd now came and asked Pilate to set a prisoner free, just as he usually did. Pilate asked them, "Do you want me to free the king of the Jews?" Pilate knew that the chief priests had brought Jesus to him because they were jealous. But the chief priests told the crowd to ask Pilate to free Barabbas. Then Pilate asked the crowd, "What do you want me to do with this man you say is the king of the Jews?" They yelled, "Nail him to a cross." Pilate asked, "But what crime has he done?" "Nail him to a cross," they yelled even louder. Now Pilate wanted to please the crowd and keep them on side, so he set Barabbas free. Then he ordered his soldiers to beat Jesus with a whip and nail him to a cross. Pilate wasn't happy with their decision and wanted no part of it. However, he knew that the political thing to do was to keep people on his side and on the side of Rome. The hostile crowd, led by the chief priests, was so determined to condemn Jesus to die that they yelled and screamed for him to be crucified. Think about, it is still so easy to be influenced by the crowd. Even today we follow the headlines and the media in crucifying people, gossiping about them, condemning them and writing them off. Have a look at the pictures, headlines and stories of people condemned and written off in our society. Think about your attitude towards them. Who influences your thinking? The media or your faith? Ask God to show you the times where you have been a judgmental voice in the hostile crowd, pointing the finger at others and falsely condemning them. Is there anything you need to change? Ask God for forgiveness for those times when you have mistakenly just followed the crowd in condemning and crucifying others. Invite God to give you a heart of compassion and to reveal the image of God in others.
Jesus is mocked. Mark 15:16-20. The soldiers led Jesus into the courtyard of the governor's headquarters and called out the rest of the troops. They dressed him in a purple robe, and they put a crown that had been made out of thorn branches on his head. Then they saluted him and taunted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him on the head with a stick, spat at him, and dropped to their knees pretending to worship him. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him off to be nailed to a cross. The soldiers took great delight in mocking Jesus. They stripped him of his clothes, dressed him in a purple robe, and placed a crown of thorns on his head. Then they verbally abused him, spat in his face, physically assaulted him. This was how they treated the Son of God. Think about it. We have all been guilty of saying things that we later regret. The unkind word, a hurtful comment, an insensitive remark, trying to make ourselves look big at another person's expense. Look at the thorns on the crown. These represent moments of hurt and mockery, small, prickly, and painful. Think about the deliberate things you have said that have hurt others. Look at the rose petals. They represent the real beauty and dignity of each person we may have hurt. Hold the petal in your hand and pray for anyone you have hurt through your words and actions, asking for God's forgiveness. Now place the pedal at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room, praying for those who have hurt you and caused you pain. Ask God to bring you to a place where you can forgive those who hurt and mock you.
Jesus is crucified. Mark chapter 15, verses 22 to 32. The soldiers brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They offered him wine mixed with a drug to ease the pain, but he refused it. Then they nailed him to the cross and gambled with a game of dice to decide who would get each piece of his clothes. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign was fastened to the cross, announcing the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." They also crucified 2 criminals with him, one on his right and one on his left. The people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. "Look at you now," they yelled at him. "You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Let's see you save yourself and come down from that cross." The leading priests and teachers of religious law also mocked Jesus. "He saved others," they scoffed, "but he can't save himself. If he is the Messiah, let this King of Israel come down from the cross so we can see it and believe him." Even the men who were crucified with Jesus said cruel things about him. As Jesus is nailed to the cross, his suffering continues and the pain is intense. He is treated as a nobody, his clothing a prize in a game of dice. The crowds continue to shout insults at him, and the soldiers offer him nothing but vinegar to drink. Think about. Crucifixion was a most agonizing death. Slow, painful, and suffocating. Smell the vinegar. As you do, notice how bitter and sharp it is. Take a moment to pray for those who are dying, and especially for those people in the world who have died for what they believe. Ask God to be close to them. Take a nail and hold it in your hand. As you hold the nail, think about the situations, memories, guilty feelings, failure, and brokenness that you would like nailed to the cross with Jesus. Carefully, place the nails at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room, giving thanks to God for taking away our guilt and shame when Jesus died on the cross, and opening the way for us to receive forgiveness.
Condemned to die on a cross for crimes he had done. He was guilty, everyone could see, but his destiny was changed as he looked at
Jesus is abandoned. Mark 15, 33 to 37. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. "Wait," he said. "Let's see whether Elijah comes to take him down." Then Jesus uttered another loud cry and breathed his last. While the darkness still covered the whole country, Jesus cried aloud for the last time and died on the cross. It was an agonizing end, brutal, cruel, and violent. The cross is a powerful symbol. It represents the pain of sacrifice and of being abandoned. But through Jesus, the cross also brings us God's forgiveness, restoration, transformation, and hope. Think about it. Once an image to be feared, the cross became a symbol of hope. Look at the images of the cross. Think about Jesus' death on the cross. What does the cross mean to you? Reflect on the times when you have felt abandoned. In your prayer, leave what troubled you to die with Jesus. Write down your ideas, words, verses, thoughts and feelings about what the cross means for you on a paper cross. This is your opportunity to respond to the journey you have shared with Jesus so far in your life. Then place your paper cross at the foot of the cross in the middle of the room, thanking God for being with you every step of your journey.
Jesus is buried. Mark chapter 15 verses 42 to 46. This all happened on Friday, the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath. As evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea took a risk and went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate couldn't believe that Jesus was already dead, so he called for the Roman officer and asked if it was true. The officer confirmed that Jesus was dead, so Pilate told Joseph he could have the body. Joseph bought a long sheet of linen cloth. Then he took Jesus' body down from the cross, wrapped it in the cloth, and laid it in a tomb that had been carved out of the rock. Then he rolled a stone in front of the entrance. Jesus' journey to the cross ends here, for now. Joseph carefully wraps Jesus' body in a white linen cloth and places it in the cold, dark tomb. Emptiness, sadness, and stillness come together as the whole of the cosmos reflects on what has happened and yet waits. Think about. As our journey with Jesus arrives at the tomb where he was buried, we can leave this place with the expectant hope of his resurrection. Read the poem Hope and give thanks and praise to God that the story doesn't end here. Thankful for the hope we have in Jesus and his resurrection. And you are welcome to take a scroll. It's a copy of the poem Hope. Take a piece of the linen cloth, placing it at the foot of the cross, as a reminder that the linens were left to show we will not be alone. Because Sunday is coming. This is the poem Hope, a spoken word poem written by Benavides in 2017. Hope is found today because Christ's selfless act was given to redeem the selfish acts of creation. Hope is given even when we yelled crucify and we decided he should die for nothing. Hope is given when he looked down from the cross we nailed his hands to, and he declared, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Hope is found on this day where life has been given through death, on a day where darkness tried to win, yet light shined brighter and conquered all of sin. Hope is found today because on his last breath we received breath. Hope is found when he looked down and said, "It is finished." It was not to say death had won, but our life had just begun, because hope is found in the one, Jesus. Hope is found today when we celebrate a stone that was rolled away to reveal freedom. We are no longer held in bondage, but we are free. Freed from chains that held us captive and aimed to kill. But our Saviour came and took them to a hill, to hang them there to show the goodness of the one who made us. Hope is found at a tomb that was borrowed, so we can know that our lives were bought at a price, at a noble sacrifice of love to bring. Hope to the hopeless, life to the lifeless, breath to the breathless, a restored creation reconciled to their Creator to join together for good. Hope is found because the linens were left to show we will not be left alone. Hope is found in the resurrection, to know that we are received by our Creator as his very good creation, because his death had no grip on his Son, the one who saw us and came to give hope. Hope that this life is not the end, because his resurrection was the beginning. Hope is found today in the eternal reward with our Creator, who thought of us on this day because we could not repay our debt. Hope is what we celebrate now, because hope was found on Easter Sunday.
It is finished. But wait, the story doesn't end there. You see, God's plan didn't end with death. And when Jesus was led to rest, redemption was still holding its breath. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming.